Hey guys, this week on Modern Craftsman podcast, we have a UI UX designer by trade who talks about his story about being laid off and now spends his time on YouTube exploring how sustainable and smart technologies impact our lives. He goes on to tell us about his most recent project, which is building his own home. He talks about working with someone like Unity Homes and other products and manufacturers that are helping him build with that similar mindset.
Yeah, so check out his YouTube. It's Undecided MF, which stands for Matt Ferrell, not the other MF. It's going to be a good place for builders, remodelers to check out some real world experience and interaction with some of these materials that he selected to use for his home. So you can tell he definitely geeks out on the technological end of building and sustainability. So he's selecting in his house build products that he wants to test and products and companies that he wants to work with. And I think he'll do a pretty good job in an in-depth assessment of how these hold up long term. So definitely check out the YouTube channel and see how those products are holding up for him. But I mentioned this earlier. Do not be turned off by this what is it? UI
UX.
UX designer aspect. I still don't know what that is, but we don't really talk much about that. We talk about his YouTube channel and what he's doing as far as the sustainability research and field that he's kind of gotten into.
And if you guys are have ever considered installing solar on your projects, you're going to want to listen to it because he drops some interesting information as to the right way to go about adding solar to your home.
Yeah, for sure.
It would be appreciated very much if you can hop on to Spotify or iTunes or wherever you listen to this podcast, drop us a review, let us know how we're doing. It's the best way that you can help support us. And of course, make sure that you share this on social media. And a quick word from our sponsors. This podcast is brought to you by Andersen Windows. Homeowners are asking for more and more glass in their homes, more views, more sunshine, and this means larger windows and more expansive doors to bring in the outdoors into their spaces. Sometimes it can be hard to know which window can meet your dimensions.
On the Andersen website, they have a fast and easy tool. It's called Find My Size. You can find it in the For Pros section of the website by Googling Andersen Find My Size.
Enter your dimensions and it'll tell you, within Andersen standard sizes, which window or door styles and which series will meet that opening.
And don't forget, they offer custom sizes as well. That information is linked in the Find My Size tool also. So visit the link in the podcast description for all the product information. Nick, myself, Doug, and Catherine are heading out. By the time this podcast drops, we'll actually be in Minnesota visiting Andersen. We're going to record a podcast with their CEO, CFO, president. So I'm pretty excited for that. So in the coming weeks, keep an eye out for some new content revolving around that trip.
This podcast is also brought to you by Buildertrend. The manual process of measuring and estimating construction jobs is tedious and time consuming. Plus, with the added element of human error, manual measurements aren't always as precise as they need to be.
Using Takeoff software allows builders to calculate material quantities accurately and quickly. Planning construction jobs comes with many moving parts and pieces. Keeping everything streamlined in one place with Buildertrend's Takeoff and project management solutions will guarantee every job stays on track from start to finish.
Ready to say goodbye to constant chaos from the start of the project? Check out buildertrend.com/MC to learn more about the leading platform for residential builders. Guys, we're live on YouTube, and this week we got Matt Ferrell from Undecided. That's how I know you. And Matt, you have an interesting background, at least in my eyes. You're a UI UX designer by trade. But if any of you guys have ever visited Matt's YouTube channel, you know that there's a wide array of content that you cover there. And seemingly recently, you went down this rabbit hole of building products and innovation and technology in building products. And, you know, spoiler alert, that's probably why you're on this podcast today. and it's super interesting because you have kind of taken maybe the consumer viewpoint, but also kind of applied your skill set in technology and been able to communicate it in a really interesting way. So I'd love to hear, if I did a good job explaining who and what you do, but would love to hear your side of it.
You did a very good job. It's like the main thing I focus on are different technologies that are impacting our lives in different ways. And over the past year or so, I've really kind of gone down the rabbit hole for building technologies, how they're getting better, homes are getting more efficient. What can we do? To the point where I'm actually building my own house right now that's an energy efficient home, trying to achieve like net zero energy. So my house will produce as much energy as I use over the course of a year. So I'm just kind of trying to share as much of everything I'm learning. I'm trying to share that so that consumers can understand what's out there, what the possibilities are, because I know there's a lot of people like me that are interested in this, but don't know where to start.
Yeah. And I mean, even like guys like Tyler and myself, the innovation of product is happening at a faster and faster pace. In our industry, never mind every other industry. And it's hard to keep up, and it's hard to understand what's, accurate and what product you should be chasing. And the reality of the fact that, there's two products on the market and both of them are equally as good, but you have this conflicting understanding as to which product you should be using.
Yep.
Because one spends, 2x the amount on marketing. It makes it seem like it's it's the best product in the world.
Yep. Exactly. Yeah. That's one of the big problems I have with I don't want to name check a company, but I'm about to do it. Like Tesla Powerwall kind of dominates the market for home energy storage.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily the best option. So it's but they do the best job of getting their product name out there and people evangelizing the product. So it's trying to explore what's out there and try to shine a light on different things that you may not be aware of.
Tesla's funny because, I feel like it's just status quo for them in the sense that you're not going to get the best customer service, and everyone talks about it, but no one cares. And it's I'm going to make a comparison to Rolex watches, which are notoriously bad at telling time. Like it's one of those things like you always have to change the timer and make sure it's reprogrammed, and that's what it's like they're known for that, and that they could fix it, but they choose not to because they get more press being bad. And I almost think it's the same thing with Tesla where, so I had an experience. We were supposed to do a Tesla roof on our passive home project, and 2 years in the making, conversations, emails. Yep. Everything's good. Yep. Okay. When do you need to know? Oh, when you get the roof on, just give us a call or shoot us an email. Whatever. And then it's, hey, roof's on. Hey, roof's on. And it's like week after week. And the next thing we know, we get an email saying, hey, so we don't have any product right now. It's like, what do you mean you don't have any product? We told you 2 years ago. And it was, just put a cheap asphalt roof on it, and then we'll come back and we'll install the Tesla roof. We'll strip it and put the Tesla roof on it. And for our client's like, that's not, it's so wasteful. Regardless of whether or not it's a cheap asphalt roof, it's the whole point in doing this. Architecturally, it was designed to have this built up Tesla roof.
Yep.
So let me ask you point blank. What's the, if they're the one that everyone thinks is the best, what would be a great replacement for the Tesla roof that we are no longer exploring for a project like this?
I'd be looking at it's GAF, like the Timberline product is probably the one I'm the most interested in because it seems like the most affordable. It's just a very smart product, the way it's designed, where you can kind of seamlessly blend it with the shingles and it's just the same level and everything like that. It's a very bare bones approach to making it a good product. Yeah.
What is a Tesla roof?
It's essentially the shingles. I think they're like 30 or 36 inches long, but they're essentially replacing the shingles with a solar panel.
Yep.
So when you're down on the ground, Tyler, it looks like a shingled roof. But when you're up close, like they're actually photovoltaic or vitalic or however you say it. Yeah. Basically solar panel.
Yep.
And and it's every shingle gets replaced. They have ridge caps, they have valley pieces, they have trim kits going around all the plumbing vents, but essentially replaces your whole roof with a solar, being able to capture solar versus, the traditional solar panels. And what Matt just referred to, the GAF product, is essentially their timberline shingle, but their exposed portion of the shingle is being replaced with a small solar panel. Arguably not as nice looking as the Tesla.
Yeah.
But the one thing I noticed about the Tesla is that if you don't plan your roof around their products, it can look pretty chopped up.
Yes, I've seen that too. I've seen people's homes look a little awkward because the roofs were not really designed for it. So yeah, that's part of the reason I like the GAF option is like because where there's not solar tiles, it's just regular asphalt shingles.
Right.
So it's like you can make it work really well for different kinds of roofs. It seems a little more flexible and a
Are
little
you
more.
doing that product on your home?
I'm not. I'm going the traditional solar panel route because I'm getting a metal roof, and solar panels with metal roofs, it's like peanut butter and chocolate. It's like they go together so well because of the C clamps can like clamp onto the standing seam, and you don't have to drill through the roof itself.
I don't know why when you said that I thought of melting peanut butter and chocolate, probably because like sun, but I'm like peanut butter and chocolate.
I just thought of peanut butter and jelly. I thought that was the saying.
But peanut butter and chocolate go well together.
They do. I actually just had a Reese's too.
Matt, you're on the East Coast, right?
Yeah, I'm out in the Boston area.
Oh, so we're neighbor. Where in Boston are you?
I'm about 20 miles outside of Boston.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah.
I didn't realize you were in Massachusetts.
I want to know before we get any further what explain to me, because I tried to make sense of this and I think I'm over complicating it, what a UI UX designer does. Like what you are and what you would do if that were your profession.
Well, it was my profession for about 20 years before I left.
Yep.
A UX designer, it's a user experience designer. So it's kind of like product design. So in software, it's helping to design what the user experience is like. What is a user trying to do with this app or this program, and trying to design a user experience around it that makes it a seamless, wonderful experience. So anytime a customer is in touching anything to do with your company, a user experience designer is figuring out the best flows, the best way things are supposed to work.
So what was your educational path with that?
Oh, for me?
Yeah, typically what is somebody who, if they're going to become a UX designer, what are they going to school for?
Usually something like human interface design, they might be studying. For me, I was a communications major, so I did a lot of information design and communication design in college. So that's kind of where I started, but that was a long time ago before human interface design really became kind of a more normal thing. So I kind of took a roundabout path to get there.
Yeah, I was looking it up and I'm like, I feel like this is over my head and somewhat convoluted, and there's secret meanings behind this. So how did you transition from doing that to what you're doing now?
That's actually kind of a funny story. The short story is I got laid off from my job.
Yeah, that'll do it.
The longer story is I had been doing UX design. I was a creative director for a long time, and I was getting burned out and was looking for a shift in my career and trying to figure out what I wanted to do. And since I have this background in communications and this love of technology, and I love learning and trying to share that stuff, I thought, I'll start a YouTube channel. And I just started publishing a couple of videos. I was about a month into publishing videos when I got laid off from my job. Took that severance package and leveraged it into doing what I'm doing now. So I just kind of completely pivoted and ended up transitioning to this. But user experience design has been really good for what I'm doing, because it's when I'm looking at a technology, I'm looking at it from that lens as a user experience designer of how is this going to impact somebody's life? How are they going to apply this to their home? How are they going to make use of this? What's the important things they need to know?
And Matt, when you say transition to this, you're talking about YouTube.
YouTube, yeah. I'm a full-time content creator now.
Yeah.
And that's been 20 years in the making?
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Wait, did I miss when you started?
Well, no, I started the YouTube channel in 2018.
Oh,
but
okay.
Yeah.
I was
it's 20 years in the making. It's honest to God, it's
right.
The stuff I did over the course of my career has helped me do what I'm doing now. So in a way, it is 20 years in the making of getting me to this point.
So you said you were doing, you started creating videos, and a month into that, you were laid off, and then you just transitioned immediately into full time. What, at that point when you got laid off, how did you make that decision that it was like, hey, I've been making videos for 30 days, I'm gonna create a living off this? Like, how did you know that was a viable option?
Well, because of my communications background, I had studied some video production and things like that. So it's like I was very at home creating videos, and I was really enjoying it. And so when I got laid off and I had the severance package, I thought, okay, I have a runway here.
Yeah.
Like,
okay.
6 months. It's like, let's give this a shot for 6 months and see what happens. If it doesn't grab, I'll go find another job.
Sure.
If it does grab, I'll just keep going. And obviously I just kept going because it ended up working out.
Yeah. So going back to something that you said in the beginning, you wanted to really research products that affect our lives. What does that mean to you?
Well, to me, it's like I'm concerned about climate change and those aspects. So it's like, for me, the things I gravitated to were electric vehicles and solar panels and home energy efficiency. But you don't have to be concerned about climate change to be interested in those things at all, because those impact our lives in interesting different ways. If you want to save money, or you want to reduce your fuel costs, or whatever the reason is you have, it's a very kind of universal topic regardless of how you got there. So for me, the motivation was around I want to try to put information out there that's the kind of that positive energy of like the things that we can do to improve our lives. I don't have kids myself, but my brother has a son, and like I always think of my nephew of like the next generation. Like, what can I put out in the world that will help him and the future generations kind of move things forward? That's honest to God my motivation behind all this.
And I mean, it's when I look at all of the stuff that you're reviewing, like I said in the beginning, it's like it's so widespread, and obviously, you're going down the home building route. You're building yourself a home, so it naturally is a good focus. But I guess my question is, do you find that home building in the construction industry is one of the biggest contributors to the concern of climate change?
I don't think it's one of the biggest ones, but it's a place where we can make a big dent.
Okay.
Because homes are, like, especially in the United States, they're not energy efficient at all. Our baseline standard building code is not good enough.
Why do you think that is?
All I have to do is look at Europe. It's like,
no, I know. I don't mean why do you think that we're lower than Europe? Like I've been to Switzerland, and I see how they build, right?
Yeah.
And I asked the same question. I'm like, I don't understand why we're not building to a higher standard.
I think it comes down to money. I mean, it's like when you look at fuel costs, like gasoline costs like 3 times as much over in Europe. Heating oil, way more expensive in Europe. Here, it's dirt cheap. It's subsidized. It's still very cheap. Natural gas is still very cheap. So I don't think there's been a motivation to go energy efficient when it's cheaper just to keep doing what we've been doing all along. So it's like, I think that's the main reason. But now, as we're transitioning and fuel prices are going up, it's starting to look better and better here in the US, money-wise, for why we should go energy efficient. So I think that paradigm is starting to shift here in the US, and we're starting to kind of wake up to what Europe and other places have been doing for decades. It's kind of inevitable. I think money is what makes the world go round, fortunately. So it's like, I think that's the big motivator right now.
I think it's an interesting perspective, and I do agree with it in a lot of ways. I just, so much with what we're building, I think that people are spending money on the wrong things. And I mean, we have the conversation all the time, Nick, where it's like, why don't you just build a smaller house nicer? And I wonder how much of that has to do with it, where it's like to make your house this efficient costs X amount, and people just aren't valuing that, which I guess it comes back to being, hey, there's no real return on this when energy is so inexpensive where we're getting it from. But I do believe that the emphasis is put on the wrong standards within our industry, and so much of it is based on square foot and resale and comps, how many bathrooms, how many bedrooms you have, rather than what the operating cost of this home may be, what level of finish the home may be, what the insulation package, all of that stuff should be very important when you're building a home that's supposed to last 100 years or more, and it's not. It's just like, how many bedrooms do you have? How many square feet? How many bathrooms?
Yeah, I want to turn that question back to you for a second, because it's kind of, for me, the house I'm building, I'm trying to make it as energy efficient as I can.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm looking at this as my forever home. So it's like I'm totally willing to spend a little more money up front, knowing over the long term how much it's going to cost to run it is going to be less. So it's
But
like,
I'm going to cut you off. If you didn't know that information,
yeah.
would you have built a bigger home?
Me personally, no. I don't need a big home. I don't want a big home. It's
Would
like,
you have built a different home?
I may have built a different home.
And what I'm getting at, and I think what Tyler just alluded to, is like the education, right? Where the end user, and this is where you come in and your YouTube channel comes in, but the end user doesn't understand the benefit of building a smaller home or a more energy efficient home, or what air tightness matters. It's, they're being educated for vanity, not, for health and efficiency.
Yeah.
So
and energy.
I want to finish your question, and then I have a couple of questions.
I was going to ask you, like, what do you think? Because there's that argument of like what the resale value is and all that kind of stuff. How do you think we should be convincing people to care about, okay, the upfront cost is a little bit more, but the long-term return is like way higher?
Well, my knee-jerk reaction to that is I think that there's not going to be a convincing of, right? We can't when you try to convince someone to do something, they're way more apt to ignore it, right? It's like when I ask my kid, I'm like trying to convince him to eat the last chicken nugget before ice cream. It's like eventually I just eat the chicken nugget and get him ice cream anyway. But if you think about, if you have to find the true value in what they can, well, you need to find what they consider valuable, right? The end user, like, you need to understand you need to understand what they find value in when building a home, and then focus what you're talking about, or the energy efficiency, or building a smaller home, how all that attributes to getting to their goal. And I think about that in any project that we're doing. And we part of our business model is that we're going to put these processes in place automatically. We're not going to talk about it. The client doesn't know how we're insulating the home. They don't know that we're looking for sub 1 ACH on every single home. Like, they don't know those things, but it's just standard practice for us. What they do know is that we're expensive, and we're more expensive. Like, their friend built a house for half the money, but we're showcasing the value by sharing our process and talking about it and pointing out the differences. And if they choose to be educated, great. I think my point is like, at the end of the day, we have to, for that client to spend twice as much money as their friend, like, we were able to communicate some sort of value to them, whatever that value might have been. And I think for us, in most of our cases, it's the commitment to quality and the commitment to craftsmanship, and the fact that we're going to get the details, and we're good communicators.
Right.
And everything is just, then from there, it's just a product of, Tyler's comment about building smaller homes, that's something that I don't know how to convince people of, because we just, we have a home that we're building right now that was supposed to be quite literally 50% of the size that it ended up at. And
wow.
Yeah. And ultimately, that's a product of realizing that they wanted to live more of their life in their home and have, flexible space and work from home. Like, it just was a product of how they ultimately wanted to live in a home forever.
Right.
And in their family that was growing, and so on and so forth. But the point is like, there's no, in that particular case, I would have never been able to convince them to build a smaller home. And the reality is that that's fine, because we can still achieve high level of energy efficiency. We can still achieve the high level of quality, but and not forcing the fact, and not putting crappy products in just for the sake of doing it because they want to build a bigger home. It just ends up being more expensive, and what becomes the constraint is obviously the budget.
Right.
To answer your question, I don't think that a lot of people are building their forever homes anymore. And I would say that most people who are building their home, if you think of somebody who's building their forever home, I believe the design process, the aesthetic would be far different. The energy assessment of that home would be far different than the way that we are building homes right now. I think a lot of people are building homes to fix a problem that they're having at the moment. And it's really hard to convince somebody to gauge the operating cost of their home and the life cycle of that home when they don't intend on being there for that long, and they can have a higher ROI on a house that's larger, more square footage, more bathrooms. I also think that we live in a disposable world right now, that's kind of chock full of faux products that look a certain way and are intended to cost less money. So everything that we're doing within our industry is basically in a complete opposite direction of what you would be doing if you were building a forever home from the design process on. And I think a lot of that is probably consumer based, and especially within our economy and United States as a culture, it's bigger is better, greed, ignorance, like a lack of financial discipline. There's so many things contributing to that. And if people had more of an approach as you're having, where it's like, hey, this is the house I want to live in forever. I want to consider the operating costs of this house. I want to consider the design of this house, not only what it's going to cost me right now, but what's it going to cost me every single year to live. People would make way different decisions than they are right now.
Yep. Yeah. I would have made a very different choice. Like if I knew I was going to live in this house for 10 years, would I have gotten a metal roof? Probably not.
Yeah.
Because asphalt's fine for that. I mean, we'll be here for 10 years. And then by the time it gets replaced, we'll be gone. But for me, it was like, I don't want to ever have to touch this roof ever again. It's like, put it on once, forget about it. So it's metal. So it seemed obvious to me what I needed to do. So I think you're right. I think there is this disposable view. It's almost like the IKEA of homes going on right now. Disposable homes.
And this is where it's really hard because IKEA is massively successful.
Yep.
Right? And there's a lot of companies that kind of copy and paste that whole business approach. And even in homes, you think about the homes that are mass produced. These are, they're utilizing things like offsite construction panelization. They're building, hey, we got 20 models and we're going to pump these things out in a factory and stand them up as quick as possible. And their life expectancy is 25 years. It's like, that's not a long time.
No, it's not.
But the reality is like, that's okay by a lot of people. Like, why do I care? It's going to last 25 years. Like, it's like a car.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't need a 5-year warranty. I'm going to have this thing for 2 years. Give me
a lease.
Yeah.
My house is a lease, essentially.
Yeah. So few people stay where it's like that. What you just said, would you have put a metal roof on if you were there for 10 years? No, I would have put asphalt on. And, and if I said, hey, asphalt's really bad for the environment, but you're going to save $40,000 if you put an asphalt roof on it and you're only going to live there for a few years, you might kind of tune out forget the environment. Like, I'm going to save 40 grand. I'm only here for
on paper, that house is going to be worth the same amount of money when a realtor goes to look at that house, where it's like, all right, how many square feet is it? What neighborhood's it in?
Right.
How much property you own? And how many, the type of roof you have on it, while to a specific purchaser that may be more valuable, but on paper, your house isn't necessarily worth more because of that.
Yeah. That's actually the problem I had when we were building our current house. It's like trying to find a bank
that
would look at our
Appraise
house as a green home, an energy efficient home, to be able to compare us to similar homes, not just square footage. It was tough. It was
It's
tough
the
to find a
appraisal
bank.
and finding a comp, and you're not going to find a comp. So they're going to want to appraise you for every other house that's in your area with those specs.
Yep.
Where it's like, well, we're not building that house.
We
Exactly.
just went through it. We're building our first spec for NS Builders. We're doing our first spec, and the appraisal came back. The appraisal on what we were projecting to build came back, and it was substantially shy. And we were like, whoa. You must misunderstand. You must have misunderstood what I wrote in our specification list. Like, this is a super insulated wall. It's going to be passive certified. They're like, what's the appliance package?
Yeah. What kind of countertops?
I was like, oh, shoot. All right, let me. And so I wrote that, like, we rebutted it, and it didn't work to our favor, unfortunately. But we rebutted it and re-explained the process. And I was like, all right, I got to make sure that they understand the value of what we're doing here. And I thought we were solid. It was like this well-written, like, oh man, like you read that and you're like, man, this is gonna be the nicest house in this whole area. And they came back and they were like, yeah, but this one right here, I'm like, that one was built for 1/5 the cost per foot.
Yeah.
And they were like, but yeah, it's the same appliances. I'm like, and that's tough. Like exactly what you said, Matt. It's like, here's, you ask about how do we convince people. It's like, well, there's a lot of people to convince. It's not just the end user. It's the appraiser. It's the real estate, professionals. It's, it's then it's the town, like what city you live in, what town you live in, what school system, like what all of those things are contributing to the cost of that home, or the appraised value of that home.
I mean, that's why most people who are building houses of that caliber are coming to the table with cash and not looking for an appraisal, and have that luxury, so to speak. Matt, when you decided, why did you decide that you wanted to build your house?
We considered looking at retrofitting a home, like buying a house and just renovating it.
Yeah.
That was something that was on the table, but we were having trouble finding a home that ticked the boxes we were looking at. We had my wife and I both work from home. I'm a content creator, so I need a room that's like for a studio that I can kind of soundproof and do all this kind of crazy stuff too. And we couldn't find a house that kind of ticked all those boxes. And so we realized it's going to be easier for us to build new than to retrofit an existing house. So that's when we kind of started looking at what's out there. We settled on Unity Homes. So it's, Ted Benson and Benson Wood Home, the subsidiary. And I was kind of sold on them, especially when I got to talk to Ted a couple times. And when he was talking about, like, he wants to build 100-year homes, forever homes. He wants to build homes that last is his big motivation. I was kind of like, okay, I'm sold. This is exactly what I'm looking for.
Yeah. What was the process like working with Unity?
It was interesting. It was pretty cool. I mean, like the design phase, the thing that surprised me the most was how flexible it is. I was expecting it to be very rigid because you're basically working
Unity's their catalog homes, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's like, I thought, with this Lego block home, we'll have a handful of choices of what we can do. Okay. We talked to them about what we wanted, and they came back and were like, could you do something a little different? Because this isn't quite fitting. And they were basically able to do whatever we wanted. And I was kind of surprised at how flexible it was. Like, once we picked, like, of the 5, like, types, we picked the one we wanted, and then within there we were able to customize it to fit our needs exactly. And so I was very impressed at how much we could customize it within their system.
And being an end user, was it strictly the fact that he communicated that he wants to build a home that's going to last 100 years, or what was the contributing factor to move forward with someone like Unity?
For me, it was the simplicity of not having to kind of like hire an architect, go through this whole process of my own with architects and I did not want a clean slate. I wanted somebody to kind of come to the table with something kind of like to handhold us through the process a little bit. So Unity or other modular built homes, similar thing. So that's kind of why we gravitated towards that. The other aspect was the energy efficiency, because they hit that passive home level quality, air tightness, and then the R value of the house, and the fact it's built in a factory has less waste. And then when it's assembled on site, it's on site like 2 weeks later, there's a structure on the site.
Your neighbors say it just showed up.
Yeah, well, it's funny because I filmed the experience of it going up, and as I'm filming it, some of my new neighbors were walking by, and somebody stopped by and said, wait, 2 days ago, there was no house here. Now there's suddenly a house. What's going on? And I talked to them about it a little bit, and they were fascinated by how it was built in a factory, then just thrown up on site. That aspect of it, for me, just kind of sold it. So like that combined with the whole, how much we were able to customize it was incredible. Yeah.
Did you, when you were going through this process, did you do any sort of cost analysis as what it would cost you to build a comparable house, essentially the more traditional way with design, stick built on site?
Yes. Yeah, we did. The rough costs that we were kind of looking at, it was going to end up being just a little bit more than Unity, but not by much. So it's like, it was kind of on the rough part. It was close enough. So it's like I could have seen going stick built, but it would have taken a lot more time to get to that point. But then having said that, the timing of how we built this house with the pandemic and supply chain issues, it took a long time anyway. So
is your house completed now?
It's almost done. Like it's built on site right now, and they're doing the finishing of the inside right now.
Cool.
Yeah.
I'm curious as to how, Nick, you can go ahead if it's something that's quicker, but I'm curious as to what that process looks like for you, because I know Nick has discussed this before, but kind of how you went about that and choosing this route and what that entire user experience looked like for you.
Well, the way it started was literally like I stumbled upon them on a YouTube video. I saw it might have actually been Matt Rensinger's channel.
Yeah.
I saw them. I was looking at Bright Built. I was looking at a few other companies. Got quotes from a whole bunch of them. Talked to a whole bunch of them. I actually went out and did the factory tour of Unity, and it was during the factory tour, it was kind of like, okay, this is it. This is the one that looks the most buttoned up to me. It's the price is right for what we can afford, and so it just kind of that ticked the boxes initially, and then the going through the design process, working with the team. We worked with a woman named Allison who was kind of helped us through the sales process and helped us design the house of what we were looking for, and that took maybe a month or so to kind of go through that process of narrowing in on what the design was going to look like. And then it transitioned to the next stage, which was, okay, it's getting prepped for build. And while that was getting started, we were doing the selections, because with Unity, we did this package where some of the interior materials were picked. Like we picked the flooring with them, we picked the kitchen cabinets and stuff like that. So the design phase of the interior components we worked on that at that point. And then after that, it was just kind of like sit back and wait for it to kind of be built. And then our local contractor that we hired, that's the one that was prepping the property, putting the foundation in, getting everything ready for Unity to show up and put it on site. That whole process was a little weird. That's my one complaint about this whole process, because we were using a local contractor who's never worked with Unity directly before. And so there were some miscommunications between them that caused things to kind of like slow down at times. So that would be my one complaint about the process.
So I'm actually super curious what some of those things were, because, for those that are listening, that is, if you dug into Benson Wood or Unity Homes, they're very strict with how they work on a project. And the envelope, being that they are designing the envelope and installing the envelope of the home, completely weather tight, watertight, airtight, windows in, everything is done when they leave as far as the shell of the home. But leading up to that is what they kind of, and they outline this in a document, like, hey, from day zero to top of foundation, that is responsibility of someone else, i.e. this other local contractor. We own the envelope. And I please correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is that when they're working with a homeowner, they're going to work directly with you. So that local contractor that would typically hire a framer, hire an insulator, hire the guy to install windows, et cetera, and and obviously have management and markup on that goes away. Benson Wood, Unity Homes, you're working directly contracted through them. So it would be as though you hired me to get to top of foundation. Unity would come in, say they're $1 million to do that scope of work. You're essentially cutting that check for $1 million to them directly. And then once they're done, then that contract flips back to me and says, all right, Nick, now you can finish the home and use your trades. Is that accurate?
That's very accurate. It's like a bookend. It's like the local
Yeah.
contractor is the very beginning, the foundation, and then once it's on site, they're from that point forward.
Right.
But that middle point, like Unity is very strict, and they had very specific guidelines as to like what should and should not be done, what materials to use and not to use. It's like they were very prescriptive about what the local contractor had to do for the foundation and things like that. Where the communication breakdown kind of happened was because with the local contractor, you're dealing with having to figure out what the HVAC system is you're going to get installed, what the electrical and the plumbing plans are. All that stuff is local. That's not Unity.
Yeah.
And so there were miscommunications in my process between what we were planning for the HVAC system and the ERV system and things like that. And Unity kind of moved forward with what they thought we needed for what intrusion points we needed for the ERV location, what intrusion points we needed for different things.
Yeah.
And it was wrong. So it was like they ended up building our panels incorrectly because there was just the wires got crossed and communication didn't happen there.
Right. Where typically this guy would be, those penetrations wouldn't matter because they would just get cut once the equipment was in place.
Yep,
where
exactly.
This is where you flip to, there's all the planning. You got to know what like you can't decide what equipment you're using later. You got to know it now. They're putting all these, even the light blocks, like there's a piece of conduit that gets installed, to that exact location, not the rough location, the exact location.
Mm-hmm.
And that's
exactly.
and when, especially when you're talking about a smaller home builder or a smaller contractor, where it's like, these guys are, very much in the moment. They're working, they work off a set of plans, but they're leaving whips in the walls. They're laying out that sconce beside their front door, when the homeowner comes by and then decides I want it at 6'8", maybe actually move it to 6'10". This is where a lot of that stuff goes away.
Yep.
When the reality is you can move it, but it just becomes a more cumbersome and difficult process.
Yeah, exactly. That's what we ran into. It's like, so we had to kind of fill some holes that were cut, and then we had to make new ones. And Unity was great because they worked with our contractor with instructions on like, okay, here's how you should, fix this. Yeah. And so it was very, very good. I mean, the process in the end, it all worked out. I'm not upset about it at all, but it was just one of those, if I knew then what I know now, it's like I would have been as a customer a little more on the ball and making sure that I was asking the right questions to make sure that stuff didn't happen.
Yeah, I'm surprised that they don't require you to have the specs for everything that you're going to be using moving into design.
Well, they did. It was kind of like, this is partially on me because Unity kind of recommends, mini split systems for HVAC.
Yeah.
We're going ground source heat pump system.
Yep.
And it's a little overkill for what Unity thought we needed. But because of that, it changed what would be recommended for like where ducts need to go. Mm-hmm. And so Unity was still going on the assumption of, we're going to do some kind of like mini split system.
Okay.
And so it was kind of like there was this kind of this the wires got crossed right there, is because me and my general contractor knew what was going to happen with our HVAC. The plans were all done. Yeah. But like Unity never asked, have you guys changed anything before they just moved forward? So it was like we didn't know we had to tell them at a certain time, and it was already being built. And so it was like,
well, it's one of those conversations too, where it's like they make the recommendation like, hey, we're going to assume that this is mini splits, and you could be like, yeah, that's fine. Like we're still working on it.
Yep.
But you just green check that box, and they're like, good. He said he's good on mini splits. We're proceeding. And then, you guys keep shaking that up in the background, realize, all right, let's go ground source heat pump.
Yeah.
And then, that doesn't get back. It's like, what does it matter? It's just a different piece of equipment. And
for me, for me, when it was funny because it's like I was there. I got to go and film some of my wall panels actually getting built. Yeah. And so I was at the factory and I'm filming like the front panels coming through. They're like, and now it's cutting out your ERV hole. And I was like, wait, there's not supposed to be an ERV there. What are they doing? That's when I first realized, miscommunication.
Yeah.
It's that's why you got to build your first Unity home for a customer and then build your own.
Yeah.
Sort out all the kinks.
Well, because you're going to ask those questions, like you're going to require that of your client way more than you require it from yourself. It's like we make sure we ask every question. If I go build a project for myself, like it would be very surprising if I figure all that stuff out prior to starting the job.
Nick, have you ever seen their product in person?
Unity?
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Or Bensonwood?
Benson, yeah, so I actually went up to the factory and did a tour. I did the same tour Matt did, and toured it with Jay. And what was super impressive was, I want to say this the right way. The panels looked really simple. Like they didn't seem overly complex. They were incredibly, like the detail in them, the way it's framed with eye joist and then the 2x3. So it just, when they broke it down and you saw each panel being made, you realized that this, the way you're building on site and stick building is so complex, and it's like they've simplified it into quite literally panels, right? And when you see like even the roof panel, they had these roof panels being made, and all the angles are cut. And I'm like looking at it, I'm like, where is that? And it's a roof panel for a dormer that's going to overlay on top of the gable roof. And it's really impressive. And we're actually chatting with them about our spec home, because we're hoping to use their system for some very similar reasons. Unfortunately, right now our design is more complex than I had hoped structurally, but we're working through that. But yeah, I mean their product is exactly what Matt said. When you walk through their shop, it's refined. Like it's not a big warehouse with just wall panels being made. It's a big warehouse that they spend 8 months designing these panels, and then they have a system in which they flow through the shop in a very methodical way, only to end up at the end of the shop stood up vertically with the windows in, taped, ready to be hauled on the back of a truck, and stood up in a matter of 2 weeks to a complete home.
Yeah, the wall panels for my house were built in 4 or 5 days in the factory. It was funny because we had planned for me to go out there to be able to film, and the panels got put together faster than they expected. So they actually paused my project so they could hold a few of my wall panels back for the time I was scheduled to come. So they put my thing on pause, went to another customer, did theirs, and then by the time I got out there, they did the last of my panels for me because they wanted me to see my panels getting built. So I thought it was really funny that's how fast they were. They were faster than they expected to be on my house. It's an incredible process. It's like watching a dance because it is so simplified, and like with the machines and like the assistant, like the way they can suction cup basically an entire panel and just drop it in place. It's so easy for the workers. Everything's at waist height, so it's like really easy to do. I just love it. It was fascinating to watch.
Aside from all the hiccups that you ran into, is there anything that you would have done differently throughout this process?
Oh, that's a good question. Done differently,
or like all said and done, taking a different path, different approach, major lessons that you had learned going through this that in hindsight you would say, hey, you know what, if we did this again, I probably would have done this a little bit differently?
Some of the things I would do differently are around, I made my own problems in this project.
Yeah,
because
I can relate.
Part of it is, I'm a content creator, and I'm kind of creating videos around this experience. And there's also technologies I want in this house that I want to be able to live with and experience to be able to talk about, like ground source heat pumps and things like that. I may not have gone that path knowing what I know now, not because it's a bad technology, but because of what I did. I started bringing in more third parties to the mix, which complicated communications, where if I could do it over again, I'd be like, okay, to my general contractor, I'm going to use whatever, trades you want to use, people that you know and you work with, and just tell me what they recommend, instead of me saying to my general contractor, okay, I'm going to work with this company over here. Now we need to bring them in, and this company over here. Now we're going to, so it's like, these people don't know each other. I'm caught in the middle of a lot of these conversations, and it's complicated the whole communications between everybody. That to me is my biggest regret. So if I had to do this over again, it would be try to simplify and take myself out of a lot of those relationships.
Yeah, I mean, because at that point, that's why you're hiring a general contractor to tap
Exactly.
into their resources and their network. And if you're complicating that,
Yep.
if they're not upset with that in the first place, it's like, all right, well, if this is what you're going to do, I'm going to wash my hands and absolve myself of a lot of responsibility when shit doesn't go right. That it's like, well, these aren't my guys, or this is how I would not do things. I don't know how your experience was with your contractor, but I would have to be appreciative of his willingness to do that in the first place, because I would have been like, no, absolutely not.
Yeah. My general contractor is actually a woman. It's a woman-owned business, and she's been phenomenal.
Yeah.
She's taken this in stride. She's really open to doing this and working with me to make sure that this is all figured out. So it's like I'm very happy. I lucked out. I picked a good contractor that was open and receptive to doing this.
It was her first project like this?
With Unity, yes.
Is she looking to do more? Was this like part of why she wanted to get together with you and do this, to be able to tap into this market some?
Yeah, she's actually her company's done work with other modular home builders before, but not Unity. She's done the factory tour, so she knew Unity. And so she was kind of eager to kind of go through this process. And I think she'd be open to doing it again, now that she also knows what to look out for and what to ask.
Yeah, I'm sure there's the whole learning curve with any. It doesn't matter, you build houses a certain way or you work with a specific company and you develop these systems, and then as soon as you change that or you work with another company, everyone works differently, and now your list of your checklists and everything that you do in your order of operations changes, and things can be forgotten, things can be omitted. So yeah, I would definitely think that getting one out of the way at that point, I would be chomping at the bit to do another one. It would be a lot smoother, probably more profitable, and a nicer finished product. That's really cool. I'm super interested. I'd actually like to see what they're doing and get out to their factory. I think Nick, Mike Siegel, he used to work with Stan. So he did a modular. One of our friends, Matt, bought a property, and he built a modular, and he was getting out of another house and they were building it. And it was more so like they were pressed for time and wanted to get it done and get in the house. And then they put an addition themselves onto the modular, and he just ended up making decisions that he felt were rushed. And I was talking to him about his experience going the modular route, and he was like, if I were to have done it all again, I would go with a company like Unity and spend a little bit more money, and just have a more cohesive and refined, more well thought out and designed finished product. So the fact that you mentioned this, and I'm like, I'm pretty sure this is the company that Mike recommended to use, and I looked it up, and it is the same company. So it's really cool to have somebody with firsthand experience going through that process.
Yeah, it's like I would strongly recommend Unity. Like, I have no reservations about recommending them at all. It's been fantastic. Of all the companies I looked at, they're the ones that seem to have the most experience. They seem to have a process that's really buttoned down.
Yeah.
And one of the things that really impressed me was their workers that are in the factory that are building the panels are the same guys that go out and assemble it. And by doing that, they're kind of like eating their own dog food. So it's like they realize, oh, this didn't work well doing it on site. We got to change this. And they come back and say that, and they refine the process. So they've got the process down. They're like a well-oiled machine. It is so smart the way they've got it set up.
So are they installing the ones that they actually build, or just splitting their time? So it's like, all right, your project comes through, you're going to build this in the shop or build X amount in the shop, and then actually go install those homes?
They're splitting their time. From what I understand is they kind of open it up to the team of like, who wants to go do this project on site? And they'll volunteer.
Yeah.
So it's
everybody's
required to do it.
I mean, the shop is, I forget how many, is it 100 or a couple 100,000 square feet?
Yeah.
I mean, there's quite a bit of people, but I mean, I wouldn't say it's overwhelming amount. Like, there's not an overwhelming amount of people, but there's multiple people at each station, and that panel has to, I want to say it zigzags through that shop probably 3 or 4 times from end to end, and before it ends up on the back of a trailer. So yeah, I mean that I think that was my understanding too, is that they kind of open it up to see who wants to go install, because they do a lot of stuff local or within what they would consider driving distance, but they also, I mean, everything's actually driving distance for them because they'll drive it across the country.
Yep.
And in that case, then they, I think my understanding was that they would fly their team out, basically ship the tools with the panels, and then they would fly their team out to install.
Yep. Yeah, they do
and
that.
then head back. Because like you said, Reisinger's done. I think he's done at least 2 that I know of with Benson. More complex homes, so it's on like the more custom Benson wood side. But my understanding was the same: is that their team went down there and assembled it.
I'd be very interested. They do if you're near Keene, New Hampshire, where their factory is, like within 100 miles or something. You can do the full Monty with them. Like they'll finish out the inside of the house as well. Like they'll do the entire thing.
Right.
And I think that experience, if you live in that area, is probably the best experience with you.
Yeah, we built a home local to Boston for a client of ours, and he was telling me that he had a house in Vermont. And I don't know why he said something, and I was like, "Oh, is it a Unity home?" And he goes, "Yeah, how'd you know?" And he must have said something about it being like a modular home or prefab home. And I had asked him, he goes, "It was amazing. Like it was super cost effective, and they got it done pretty much immediately." But I think they did I think they had the same experiences, that they handled the whole thing. Like they got the whole house done, handled the whole process. And the envelope of the home is like, that's a huge portion. When you look at the percentage of work that goes into building a home, like that's a huge portion. Tyler, like your project that, I think you and I chatted about, it's like, that's the biggest, if you can get that envelope weather tight as fast as possible, everything else you can, realistically kind of just trickle away, like pick away at.
Yep.
But if you take your time on the envelope, it's like all you're doing is exposing the structure of that home to the elements for a prolonged period of time.
I mean, realistically, like that aspect of the build really is the only place that you can make up time in a project as well. Because like everything when you get to finish stage is going to take longer than anticipated and be drug out with either securing materials, overlapping subs, issues with products. So if you can gain time in the beginning of a project, that really it's the only opportunity to do that. So if, like you said, if you can get the structure done and dried in and finished and then move right to the interior, it's really fascinating. I mean, how cool would it be, Nick, if you were building homes this way and like controlling this entire sequence and not having to have all of these different companies, different framing companies, different exterior companies.
This is what I'm trying to do.
I mean, it's the same thing though as Matt, what you experience, where it's like you're bringing in different sub pools. Every single build for a standard contractor is generally a different set of circumstances and metrics that you're dealing with, and a lot of times different sub pools. Even if it's the same sub pool, it's different employees. So to be able to control that and be consistent with that is very enticing and very interesting to me.
I'm curious, if you're trying to do something similar to this, are you going to be working with them? Because I know they're open sourcing their software they use, so that basically anybody could basically design their own home and then use the factory to build it.
Yeah, so we wouldn't be building Unity. It wouldn't be a Unity product. We'd be working with them on the Tectonic side, which is technically like their panelization firm. But the spec home that we're doing that we're designing, we fully intend to have Benson Wood or Tectonics do the panels.
That is awesome.
And there's a large part of me that there's a whole list of reasons why, but one of the reasons that I had communicated, I'm like, I really just, the area that we're building is just completely filled with everyone buying homes, knocking them down, building, and it's just constantly under construction, where, I do want to be, we're going to be new to that area. We're going to be new to the spec market, but I also want to be the builder that's not making, a ruckus in that neighborhood for a prolonged period of time. I do want to be the guy that when they walk by, they walk their dog on the weekend and they'd be like, where the hell did that house come from? It's like, I didn't hear the guys with the nail guns for, the last 10 weeks. This thing is, and look, he's got the windows in and he's got plaster going on. I think that there's a, the initial ROI on that is obviously very hard to measure, but I do think that when you approach it that way, and like your new neighbors, right? There's this sense of, consideration for them, that like, oh, this guy like took the opportunity to build a home in a factory so we didn't have to listen to nail guns for 8 weeks. Or oh, he took like, and then it's, well, no, it's actually a nicer product, it's a better product. Oh, by the way, there's less waste, rather than having a dumpster that's going to probably run over your mailbox. That guy doesn't exist anymore. There's no more dumpster.
Yeah, that has definitely gotten noticed by my neighbors in this new neighborhood, is that there's no dumpster in front of the house. It's like, it doesn't look like a typical job site.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I just think it's, I mean, anyone that listens to this podcast is like, here Nick goes, like he's talking about offsite construction again. But I just think like there's so much opportunity here, and I think Unity, Benson Wood, Tectonics, whatever, however you want to classify them, they are leading the way with doing it the right way and approaching it the correct way, where they are refined, and and exactly what you said, Tyler, and what Mike Siegel faced with other companies is that it's not just a company that says, oh yeah, I can build that in a factory and then show up and assemble it. It's, hey, no problem. Let's think about this for the next 8 months. And I want to know where your sconce is going, where your doorbell is located. Like, we got to make these decisions, not because I want to stress you out with the micro decisions, but we need to be thinking at that caliber.
Yeah. What, if you don't mind me asking, Matt, how many square feet is the house that you built?
It's about 2,000.
2,000 square feet. And I was listening to a podcast with you, and you seem to be a very analytical spreadsheet type of guy. Did you look at the operating costs? I know you said you did, but like, what information can you provide us with operating costs and the lifespan of this house versus building a more traditional home? Did you get that far into it?
I have, but it's been very guesswork on my side because I'm not in the house yet. So I was basically going off of like the manual J's that were created for the different heating systems we had put together, with the estimate of how much energy it would take, how much it will cost each year, factoring in like the things that I'm going to be bringing to the house. And this is where the guesswork is. We'll have 2 EVs. We'll have a solar panel system that's going to be like a 20 kilowatt solar panel system on top of there. And it's like did this all to figure out how much of solar I thought I needed. Mm-hmm. So I figured out exactly kind of like what I think it's going to be. The question will be actually living there for a year and finding out how far off was I in those estimates.
And did anyone help you with all of that, or is that a task that you took on yourself?
I took it on myself. I was like, there's no way I'm going to bring somebody in to do this, because like I'm going to get way too nerdy on this.
Yeah. So do you have anything as far as what you believe would be like an initial investment versus how long it'll take to recoup that investment?
Yeah, it's like I figured out like different aspects of it for like the geothermal system, estimating probably that 8 to 9 year time frame for it to kind of like return on investment. Yep. For the solar panel system, it's probably gonna be something similar, 8 to 10 years, depending on where it lands.
That's still like nothing.
No, it's not. I'm going to be living there for 25 years or more. So it's like, it's all good. So I don't mind about that time frame at all.
I mean, even if you're getting close to that, if you lived in that house for 7 years and something happened, you're so close to the break even at that point that it's like you're not shooting yourself in the foot being like, oh, we never should have done this. And to live in a house for 7 years, really, it seems like a long time until you get into a house. And then it's like, geez, we've been here for 10 years already. We've been here for 8 years already. It's not that long to live in a house, and to think that you only have 8 or 9 years to recoup that investment is not as daunting as what I would have thought it would be.
It's part of, I was also looking at products that have good long warranties. So it's like when I was looking at energy storage, like what battery am I going to put in? I'm going with the Enphase IQ battery system. that is going to have an extended warranty of 15 years. And it's like, it will have kind of paid for itself in a decade. So it's like its warranty is going to go beyond the point at which it's earned its keep. So it's
so much
it's huge.
So much different than an old house. I even know, looking and remodeling older homes where we're not controlling the entire house or upgrading HVAC system, and it's like a small cost investment of $1,500, $2,000. It's like, yeah, you'll never recoup that based on energy savings due to the energy loss with the insulation package that's in this home. And it's like, that's like $1,500 that you would literally never recoup that cost.
Yep.
And when you're building a new home that's energy efficient, and with the wall systems they have, to think that you're going to recoup a much larger investment is pretty cool.
Yeah. I'm basically looking at that decade time frame for a return on investment for a lot of the equipment we're getting.
And it'd be really hard to do that. I think that your situation and what you do presented itself with a unique opportunity for yourself, where it's almost a no-brainer to build, because partnerships with companies, you're enjoying what you're doing, you're starting from the ground up, you're creating content while doing. It's almost like a business venture while you're able to build your forever home.
That's exactly how I was approaching this. Like with the ground source heat pump system, that's how I was looking at it. It's like, okay, this is an opportunity to live with this, experience it, and share what it's like, the good and the bad of it, like cost-wise, experience of taking care of it, like all that stuff, and to share it. And it's a business opportunity because I'm using it for my channel. So it's like, for me, it was an easy kind of like write-off of like, okay,
absolutely.
I'm definitely going to be doing this.
Yeah, I guess it's not between us, but we're looking to purchase some land and build, me and my family, and we had been looking at homes, and it's like, what we'd have to spend to get into a home, and still it would be a massive compromise. At the end of the day, we could build something with the resources and the network that I have for roughly the same cost, if not less, and get everything that we want and have a new home. And it's the same thing where I look at my personal channel, my business channel, the Modern Craftsman channel. I'm like, there's a ton of opportunity here to create and generate a lot of content around this as well, for the industry as a whole, learning experiences, techniques, products, all of that stuff, where it's like, yeah, this really makes more and more sense the more that we think about it. Ask me halfway through the project and I may have something else to say. But going into it, it's like, why would we buy a house for $750,000 that we still have to put another $250,000 into, and it's still not what we actually want? It makes no sense. So it's definitely a really cool opportunity that you've created for yourself, to be able to do this. I'm interested. I also want to talk to you a little bit about your solar findings. I am very ignorant when it comes to solar. I know there's a lot of companies out there that are just like, it's a business model and they're selling it, and probably indicative of a lot of other companies where they market themselves well and they're selling these systems and units, but not necessarily the right way. I would like to know a little bit more about your findings on solar and how you decided to do solar, and that industry a little bit.
Yeah, well, for me, it's, the climate issue, but for me, it's also save some money. It's like, I want to put solar on my roof to reduce my energy bill, and over however many years, it'll pay for itself, and then it's kind of gravy after that point. That's incredibly appealing. And then also having energy that can be stored in a battery on site. So if the grid goes down during the winter because some power line gets knocked out, my house still has power. I don't have to worry about it. So those were the motivations to initially go into it. But a lot of times when you're looking at solar, it's kind of like the salesman, kind of like a used car salesman. You have to be careful.
It seems very shady to me.
Oh man, there are so many shady tactics that are taken. And like the first thing I would say out of the gate is, anybody that's trying to sell you on a power purchase agreement, a PPA, or some kind of lease system, just walk away.
Why?
Those tend to be, you don't actually own the panels.
Right.
So a lot of times it's like, hey, there's no money down. We put them on your roof, and if something goes wrong, we fix it. You don't have to worry about it. And it sounds great, but then when you go sell your house, you can't sell your house because they got a lien on your house or something against it, because you'll have to either buy out the panels, which means you will have to put a lot of money out front at the end, and you'll end up overpaying for the panels if you had just bought them outright in the beginning. Or you have to get the new owner to sign a power purchase agreement to take it over for you. And if you don't want to do that, then the panels have to be taken off. And again, that's at your own expense to take them off the roof.
Interesting.
So it's one of those things. That's part of the reason why I don't recommend it. Because I don't think a lot of home buyers are eager to sign a power purchase agreement with somebody. So if it's a panel system that has been bought with a loan or with cash, and it's part of the house, a new buyer is going to be like, hell yeah, I want to save on my electric bill.
Because if you're doing one of the lease options, that is helping your bill, correct?
Yes, a PPA, a power purchase agreement, and a lease does help your electric bill. Like that's the kind of the perk is that there's no money down, and you'll start saving money on your electric bill right away. So that's the appeal.
And correct me if I'm wrong. Like you can get down to a $0 electric bill.
Not that way. No,
you can't. And why?
It's
because of
it kind of depends on where you live and what your electricity rate is and the size of the system. But the average size of solar panel systems is usually not enough to cover 100% of your energy use.
I'm going to re-ask that question. Yeah. But compared to like if you own the panels versus leasing the panels, that doesn't dictate how much power you can produce against your electrical bill, right?
No.
Like meaning like if you lease it, they're only going to allow you to make enough to cover 80%. They'll never like they're not. No. Yeah, right.
Okay. They don't do that. But it's like a company that's putting it on there. Obviously, they're going to cap the size of the system to what they think 100% of the use is, because they're not going to put an oversized system on your roof. There's kind of a window that they'll work within when they're putting it on your roof. But yeah, they won't like handicap you to 70% or something like that.
That's interesting. We were looking at a commercial space recently, and I was on the phone with the guy, and we're chatting numbers. And he goes, "Oh, by the way, there's also a Verizon lease on the building." I said, "What's a Verizon lease?" He goes, "There's a tower on the side of the building." He's like, "You would end up taking that lease over." So they basically said, "Hey, this is a good spot for cell towers," and they connected all their like stuff to the side of the building. And he's like, it covers the entire year's worth of real estate taxes. So I was like, yeah, it's no brainer for me, which is like great. Like I've never even thought I've seen this stuff strapped to the side of buildings before, but never realized that like Verizon leases that side of the wall for whatever it is, like $20,000 a year. But it's similar here where it's like you said, I never thought about the fact that you go to sell your house and it's, the new owner has to sign that. And if they don't, you either have to remove it or buy out those panels.
Yep. And just like a lease of a car, it's cheaper to buy the car up front than it is to lease it and then buy it at the end.
Yeah.
So that's why I don't recommend them. Like, and oftentimes the really shady salespeople will try to sell you on a PPA, and they'll make it sound like you're going to get a lot of the federal tax rebate money and stuff like that. Because you don't own the panels, you get none of the rebates. It's the company that's installing it that gets the rebates. So like the federal 30% off the installation, the company gets it. You don't.
Yeah.
If there's,
hey, we're going to install these panels, and then this project will be eligible. It's like this
for
project.
Us.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that's going to us.
Yeah.
So how did you find the company that you went with?
This is going to sound like a sales pitch, but there's this company called Energy Sage, which is available here in the United States, and you can go plug in your address and you can get quotes from installers in your area, and they're kind of vetted installers, and there's reviews. So people who have used them before are all there. So there's star ratings, and all the quotes you get are kind of like apples to apples comparisons, because they have to give you quotes in a very specific way, which makes it easy to compare them. That's how I found my company that I use on my current house, and on the new house, I'm using the exact same company because I loved working with them. They were great. So I'm going to use them on the new house too. So I kind of lucked out in finding a really good place.
So what do they do? So what does that process look like? Like you call them, and then what happens next?
Well, with Energy Sage, it's like there's actually no phone calls. It's all done through a website. So it's like you don't get spam calls and all this stuff. It's just like all these quotes start showing up in your account, and you can kind of just look through what they think it will cost, what kind of size of system they think it will be. And then you can just like cherry pick like 2 or 3 of them and say, okay, I want to actually talk to you guys.
Okay.
And so that's what I did, is like I went and I talked to a few different installers and just made the call based on like the company I thought I had more trust in based on what they said to me and how they answered my questions.
And then what do they come out and do, like an assessment of your property, your house, and all
Yep.
of that stuff, and then provide you with a quote based on a size of a system that they feel you would need?
Yeah. So there's that initial quote, which is just it's basically like a satellite image that
Yeah.
they used. And so it's a really kind of rough swag as to what they think it will be. But then when they come out, they inspect
Swag
your
is scientific, wild ass guess, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So
I
then
did not know that.
Yeah.
they'll
Why
go
did you know that?
It's impressive that you knew it.
One of my college professors used to say wags and swags. So wag is just a wild ass guess, and swag's a scientific wild ass guess. So it's like a notch higher.
Yeah. It's a one step better than just a rough estimate.
Yeah.
All right.
But they'll inspect your roof. They'll look at things and make sure that the roof can take the weight. They'll kind of look at sometimes take readings of light readings to see exactly what the solar radiance is over the course of a day, over the course of a year. Then they take it back and they'll put their software package and refine the quote for you and give you a final, this is exactly what will cost and here's what we recommend. Yeah.
And you knew that you wanted to purchase from the get-go?
Yeah, for us, it was never a question that we were going to get a loan to do the solar.
Yeah.
So with solar, like, what was your goal with that? Like, what were you trying to accomplish? Getting your utility bill down. I want to be able to charge my car at night. I want to be able to store electricity. Like, what were some of the again, very similar to Tyler. I'm completely naive to this.
Mm-hmm.
We actually have never done solar on a project, though we've explored it many times.
Mm-hmm.
And we're also doing a project for ourselves that we're considering solar on. But I just wrote like, hey, let's consider solar on the roof. And that was it. I haven't done any other research. So like, what was your, like, going into it, knowing that you wanted solar? I understand the climate side, but, tactically, what were your goals?
For my current house, I got an EV. And when you get an EV, suddenly my electricity costs go way up because you're charging that car up. And it was like, okay, I want to offset like that car. So it was like, I want to get solar because if I get solar, that's free sunshine that I can funnel right into my car. So it kind of helps to offset that additional cost. The second thing was where I live, on occasion during the winter, tree branches come down, knock out power lines. You're without power for, 8 hours or a day and a half or something like that until it gets repaired. So it was like, I wanted to have a system that for those short periods where the power goes out, I'm not going to care because my solar panels are up and I have a battery that stores the energy and I'll never even know the power's out. So that was the second thing that I wanted. And so that's kind of why I got the current setup I've got. And then in the new house, it's kind of similar because I'm building a house that's all electric. I'm not going to have natural gas. I'm not going to have everything. So my energy use, my electricity use is going to go even higher with two electric cars, ground source heat pump, all that kind of stuff. So it's
ground source heat pump takes a lot. There's a lot of electricity with that system.
Yeah. So it's like I wanted to make sure that I was producing as much on site as I can to try to keep that down to help offset any kind of electricity costs. So it's the same thing. For me, money actually is a major motivating factor in doing what I'm doing and thinking about things from the point of view of the long-term investment. Because I'm not going to be in this house for 10 years. I'm going to be in here for 25 years. So that was for me.
When you think about battery backup, I mean, you're not doing a generator, right? There's no provision for a generator. So what do you, like, how long is that battery backup? You mentioned the company as well. It wasn't a Tesla wall, but
no, it's an Enphase IQ battery.
Enphase IQ.
Yeah, I'm going to be getting a 20 kilowatt hour system, which should be enough that would easily carry me through 24 hours, maybe 36 hours. If I cut back how much energy I'm using at the moment, maybe
that's 100% load, meaning like you're using your lights, your TV, your refrigerator, everything.
Yeah, if I didn't stop doing stuff, I could easily go 24 hours. Now, I could extend that by cutting back on what I'm doing and extend it even further. So it's going to be plenty for that. I mean,
in that case that the power is knocked out for multiple days, what do you do?
Well, for me, it would be like if you have to make the call of, well, I'm using a Span smart panel in my new house. I don't know if you know about Span smart panels. Yeah, it has auto load shedding. So like when the battery gets down to 75%, it can shed off, certain circuits. And if it hits 50%, it sheds off more. So it's like I'm going to be setting it up to do that so that I'll try to extend that battery life as far as I can so that if it's a 48-hour event, I can cover myself through that period and it will just happen automatically. So I'm trying to extend this smaller battery pack I've got. I'm trying to extend it as far as I can. But if you're in a situation where you see outages like that more often, you can put a generator in addition. So you can have a backup to your backup.
Right.
I don't think I'm going to need that, so I'm not planning for it right now. But the system I'm getting is capable of doing that.
Yeah, if you had to, you go get a portable generator and backfeed it.
Yep.
If you need to.
Yep.
Right.
Exactly.
How many amps are you putting in your home?
200.
Just 200. Yeah.
Yep.
That's we actually explored. We actually have a span panel in our passive house project. We have a sub panel off of that as well. But it was the same reason. Like, there's going to be solar. There's, I forget if they were going to do. I think they're doing the Tesla Powerwall because it was supposed to be partnered with the roof.
Mm-hmm.
Whether or not that is still the case, I'm not sure. That project's on pause right now. But I'll share the one that you just mentioned, Enphase IQ, because I think that is like that's the interesting side of solar, is that you can store this and use it at a later date.
Mm-hmm.
Random question, but what EVs do you have?
I have a Tesla Model 3, and my wife still has a gas car, but not for much longer. We're going to be replacing that soon.
What are you going to replace it with?
We're looking around at there's a Hyundai Ioniq 5
Yeah.
or the Ford Mustang Mach-E.
Yep.
We're looking at those kind of cars.
Yeah, cool.
What how much fun has this been for you to figure out all of these systems and choose what you want to put into this house? It seems like this has been very exciting for you.
Oh man, I'm like a kid in a candy store. I'm like having so much fun. It's like I talk about a lot of these technologies on the channel for so long, and it was like, oh, I actually get to build a house where I got to put some of this in here now. It's like, so I got super excited about doing some of this. And there's stuff that I'm not putting in here that I want to put in there maybe down the road. Some new stuff. Yeah,
you're probably so pumped to just get in the house and be like, I want to see how it all comes together and how it works. Are you afraid of, so there's a double-edged sword when you are implementing a ton of new technology into a home. Are you concerned with the longevity of the technology and at some point becoming obsolete, being that this is your forever home and you're going so tech-heavy with it?
It's in certain regards, yes. Like I mentioned, the Span Smart Panel. I love Span. This is not a knock against Span, but this stuff is very new. Will Span be here 10 years from now?
Yeah.
I have no idea. If they go out of business, what happens to my Span?
Mm-hmm.
Will it still work?
that was a question I had asked for our project.
Yeah.
And I forget I don't know if it was one of the guys that worked at Span, but what we essentially come to realize is that if their technology just doesn't evolve or they go out of business, essentially what you're left with is a very expensive panel that operates exactly like any other panel, and it just looks a little sexier. That's it.
Right.
So, that's really the risk, is that you're just paying more for a panel, which frankly nowadays, you might want it, like you might spend any amount of money for panels, because some projects I can't even get a panel with the delays and that stuff, the supply chain. But that's that I think Matt, like, that is one of the biggest things that we can like collectively probably agree with, that when you're looking at new technology or implementing new things, ask that question.
Mm-hmm.
Ask the question as to, like, if you don't survive as a company, what am I left with? Because a perfect example of it is all those old lighting control systems in these homes that just, like, they went out of business or they failed, and it's like it's not like you're just left with an expensive light switch. You're left with no lighting control, and now you're rewiring the whole home just to be able to turn your lights on again.
Yeah.
And that's an area that we consider as well. It's like, we had we did a home that was all voice controlled. You walk in, you say, hey, Alexa, turn this on, to do this, to do that. But we were very adamant to make sure, like, hey, if Alexa goes away, we can still turn these lights on, right? He's like, yeah, just press the button as a normal light switch. I'm like, great. As long as we're not, removing that, like that would be a nightmare.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, remember when everything was voice controlled? Well, hey, maybe I lost my voice and now I need switches. It's like, well, you're kind of screwed.
It's like all the old low voltage lighting systems,
That's right.
which they do it now with the new technology where it's like relatively easy. I know my dad had a house where they did that, where basically all the switches were in one closet and then ran the low voltage to the fixtures. And it's like, once those transformers start to go that are buried everywhere, it's like, what are you doing to get new lighting throughout your entire house? We remodeled a basement and they had a bunch of transformers for old AV. And they're like, yeah, we don't want to get rid of the AV. And I'm like, we're going to cover all this stuff up. And if those transformers start to crap out, it's going to be an issue. So we either have to cut like all new access panels everywhere in your brand new basement or replace those speakers and transformers now, which we ended up doing. But it's definitely something to consider going into it, especially when, like you said, it's your forever home. You don't want to be 20 years into this and be like, oh my God, nothing in this damn house works anymore.
Yeah, it's like you have to have a fallback plan. Like for the span, it's like I asked them that question point blank of like, what happens to the thing if it doesn't work? They actually have a local API, which is a software protocol so that you can talk to it locally. Mm-hmm. It's not documented right now, but there's already a community that in the smart home community that's already tapping into it. And so I've actually been experimenting that with my current house, which has a span. And so I'm able to control my span locally, not through the internet. So if in theory span went away, I could still technically control it. But it's a very nerdy solution. So not the average consumer is not going to do what I'm doing.
Right. The average consumer would just accept the fact that the software is dead and you turn it on and off like a normal panel.
Right. So that's something you do have to know about, ask about. Mm-hmm. It's actually kind of relates to why I did a metal roof and solar panels instead of like a Tesla solar roof or the Timberline stuff. Mm-hmm. I opted to go that way because those kind of solar shingles are still so new. It gave me pause as to like what happens 5 years from now. If I got the Tesla solar roof 5 years from now, they're on version 5 and they're no longer manufacturing version 3, which was put on my roof and something broke. What do I do?
Right.
It's like I'd be screwed. So it's like I was like, I don't want to do that. I'd rather just have a metal roof with panels that can be popped off and popped back on. Yeah. And I can go with whatever panel I want.
That's fair. I mean, I think we were supposed to get version, I want to say 2. Mm-hmm. And I can't remember if version 1 or 2 looks better, but I remember being like, oh, that one looks better. And they're like, oh yeah, that's the other version. They don't manufacture it anymore. And it's like, what if a tree fell?
Yeah.
Like what if it clipped off the corner? Like you're just screwed.
Yeah. That's exactly why I
did. Then what you're gonna have is like 5 years from now, 10 years from now, you're gonna have this aftermarket,
you just replace it like any other roof when the shingles blow off with whatever you can find.
Yeah,
and they just don't match. You have the old white roof with like green patched in shingles.
Dude, I drove by. Sorry, we're digressing, but I drove by a job the other day, and they put black architectural shingles on the addition they just put on, and they feathered it into a brown roof. And I'm like, I'm just gonna give them
ombre.
I'm just going to give them the benefit of the doubt that they're eventually going to re-roof the main house. But for right now, like I would not want my sign in front of that house.
Yeah.
It's like, what are we doing here?
Matt, what's the thing that you're most excited about that you're putting into your new home product or system?
Oh man, that's a tough one.
Like when you get into your new home, what are you really pumped to be like, I can't wait to see how this performs?
Honestly, it's the shell itself.
Yeah.
Like I've never lived in a house that's going to be this airtight, that's going to have this kind of R value, the triple pane European style tilt turn windows. I am like, I don't know why I'm so excited about those stupid windows, but I'm super excited about them. So it's like, I'm really excited to be in a house where it's going to hopefully feel like super comfortable no matter where I am in the house. It's going to be quieter than a typical house. It's like, that's the stuff I'm most excited for, is just to kind of live in it and experience what it's like.
I think that is something that isn't talked about a lot, is how quiet these homes are.
Yeah.
I toured a CLT home down in Connecticut, and I'm not sure if it was passive certified or not, but it was, overcast when we got there. We're outside looking at the home, beautiful home. We go inside and we're chatting in the kitchen, and they have these two probably 12-foot wide, 8-foot tall doors in the back that just overlook this lake. It's beautiful. And we're sitting there chatting, and I look over and I'm like, wow, it looks like it's raining out. And I'm like, wait a second. It's torrentially, like it is a torrential downpour outside.
Yeah.
And and one of the architects said, "Isn't it cool how quiet it is? Like I couldn't hear anything. Like
Yeah.
it was as though there was nothing going on outside." And that I think is, I mean, some people might disagree, but I think it's like a sense of calm where it's just like the home is the home. You get to, like, you have full control over the indoor environment. If you want to listen to the rain, you get to open the window. If you don't, you shut the door or shut the window.
There's a quality of life there that's like kind of an intangible thing. I toured there's a hotel in Connecticut called Hotel Marcel that was retrofitted and made to be passive house quality.
Marcel?
And Hotel Marcel. And I got Bruce Becker, who's the architect that renovated the hotel. He gave me a tour of it, and I got to see the heat pumps and the crazy solar array, and he was giving me a tour of all the rooms. And we walked into this one room, and he said, walk over to the window and check this out. And there's a I-95, massive highway, just right out the window. You could not hear a thing. It was, you could have heard a pin drop in this room, and yet you're looking at this massive highway right out the window. Absolutely incredible. And then when I'm standing there, I was getting all giddy of like, my house is going to be like this.
Yeah. It's like, this is going to sound super dumb, but I just wear normal ear pods when I wear headphones, and everyone in my office will wear like noise canceling ones. And it's super annoying because I'll like yell someone's name, and I'll get up, go knock them on the shoulder, and like, they're like, oh, what's going on? And I didn't understand like why they couldn't hear me.
Yeah.
And my wife got the Apple Pods Pro, and I took them out the other day, and I put one in, and I put the second one in, and it does that thing where it shuts off the noise.
Yeah.
That was, and I know everyone's like, dude, they've been around for whatever 5 years. That was the weirdest experience. I did it like 5-6 times. I'm like, I was like, this is crazy.
Yeah.
And it's, and like, it's just like that. It's like you're all of a sudden the noise is gone, and you don't realize how loud, like, quote unquote, life is.
Yeah. Everything.
Where it's like 5 a.m, no one's awake, no one's up. I'm downstairs, I'm getting ready, and all of a sudden I'm gonna go for a run, and I click this thing in my ear, and it shut off the noise that I didn't even know was on. And I think about like that. You go up to the window, and it's like there's traffic directly outside, and you can't hear that. That's a weird experience because you expect to hear it.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what's not like that when I'm out in my shop and it's just a metal building with zero insulation and it starts to rain. Like it'll be drizzling and I'm like, oh my God, it must be pouring outside. And I open the door and it's like sunny with a few drops of rain coming down. And then like when there is an actual storm, it's intense. Saturday we had hail and tornado warnings come through. And my wife's like, I think you should come in real quick. And I was prepping my bike for a race, and it starts like picking up. And I'm like, it sounds like this place is about to just blow up right now. It was so intense. I was almost scared. It was so loud.
But you could argue that there's a sense of like calm to that.
I used to love that when I was in school and it would rain and like you would hear it on the flat roof.
Yeah.
I used to love that. Even when I was growing up, I was in the 3rd floor and I had skylights and I enjoyed the sound of the rain. I still, even we live in an old house now, and like to hear the wind outside, it's nice. But at the same time, to feel the wind inside is not cool. Like I'm tired of sitting in my house and being like, I can feel a breeze where I'm sitting and everything's closed.
Right. It's exactly like if you wanted to listen to the rain, like being able to prop the window open a little bit and listening to, outside, like that's nice.
But it is, Matt, I'm excited for the same thing. I've always lived in my house now is 150 years old. Our last one was 120 years old.
Wow.
And I've never had any sort of efficient home that has maintained consistent temperature or not. It's like the heat turns on and it's comfortable, and then the heat turns off and it's cold. And
Yeah.
I'm like very excited to just feel stable within my own house and be like, well, that there's a warm spot over there, which is going to be really cool, and just everything be more consistent and even keeled and not so polarizing.
Yeah. My
How
house
old's
isn't
your
that
house?
old.
No.
It was 1950s, the one I'm in right now, but it's the
Yeah.
same thing. It's like, oh, you're in the living room and you're like feel like you're getting cooked, and then you're in
Yeah.
my office and it's freezing in here. So it's like I'm tired of that. I want a
Yeah,
nice,
it
consistent
wasn't
home.
it wasn't a great time for architecture. I mean, not that now is that much better, but we do have an opportunity to build to a higher level. So for somebody like yourself who geeks out on all of these systems and technology, it's got to be a very cool time to build something for yourself, especially with how hands-on you've been throughout that process.
Yeah. One thing that makes me feel good is like I know I'm not alone in my excitement, because when I publish videos about my experience with my house or these new technologies for homes, the comments on those videos, you can tell there's a lot of people out there that are interested in this too and want to do the same thing for their homes. So there's a lot of interest in improving things.
So it was a few years ago when you got laid off?
It was
Right?
2018.
2018.
Yeah.
What's that roller coaster of emotions been like from 2018 when you get laid off to where you are now? Because it seems as if you wouldn't be doing what you're doing now had you still had that job.
Probably not. It's been a surreal experience, would be the best way to put it. I mean, when I was getting laid off, my boss stopped actually part of the way into the we're sorry to let you go. And he said, you're taking this extremely well. And I realized when he said that, I was sitting there smiling because I was like,
Yeah.
I saw an opportunity ahead of me. And I told him why. And so we talked about that for a little while. But it was still kind of this nail-biting experience, kind of like, is this going to work out? How's this going to go? And then the YouTube roller coaster of like, oh, this is amazing, or this is all falling apart. And then the next month it's like, oh, this is amazing again.
Yeah.
So it's like that whole roller coaster ride of trying to make a living doing this. I've gotten used to it at this point. So I'm used to the roller coaster ride, but it's been a lot of fun, very surreal.
Yeah, I think that's one thing that a lot of people don't realize, that I don't know. It's like that saying, the harder you work, the luckier you get, where when you leave a job or you're forced to do something else, you really do control your own destiny, so to speak, and create opportunity for yourself. That I think the comfort and the lessened anxiety of having a job that you have a steady paycheck rolling in each and every week. I don't know if that breeds the best version of yourself for some people. It's not until you're faced with a little bit of adversity and your back's against the wall where you're like, all right, let's see what we can really do here. And the fact, that you were presented with that opportunity and you saw it, presented with a challenge and saw it as an opportunity to create something that you've been wanting to do. And, 4 or 5 years later, you're now living the dream, so to speak, and building your own house. And I understand that it's not all it appears to be on this podcast and in life. Like, there's a lot of challenges, but I would feel fairly safe in saying that you wouldn't be having the opportunities that you are now if it weren't for being faced with that door shutting right in your face.
It was the best thing that ever happened to me.
Yeah.
I'm working more now than I ever worked in my day job. Like, you're working 80, 90 hours a week sometimes. And if I was trying to do that in my old job, I would have been so burned out and been like, I'm quitting. But now it's like I have a different energy because it's my thing and I'm invested in it and I'm feeling great about what I'm doing. So it's a very different experience that I'm glad this happened to me because it's opened up a new view on the world that I didn't have before, working in that safe, day job.
Yeah.
Getting that steady paycheck.
It's cool. And you don't realize how much time you have to devote to figuring out. I mean, a good builder is going to spend the necessary time figuring out what products and systems they want to use for their customer. And I'm sure you could probably attest to at this point how much time it takes to really dig into these products and figure out how they work, which is the best choice, why it's the best choice, the life cycle of it, the cost investment, the return on that investment. I mean, it's a full-time job in and of itself. And then creating content on top of that and actually doing the work, building the house. But if it's something that you enjoy, like you take all of that and you roll with it and it's fine. If you didn't enjoy it, if this was a paycheck for another company, like you said, you'd be burnt out and probably resentful of the situation.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'm always impressed by builders like yourselves that are like so in tune with what's happening in the space and what things to do to push it forward. Because like you said, there are people I've come across that they're doing it the way they've done it, and they're always done it that way, and they have no interest in learning the new thing. And then I come across some of the builders like I'm working with now that are just like, they're on the cutting edge and they're willing to like, I said, have you thought about this? They're like, oh yeah, I looked in that just a couple weeks ago and here's what I found out. And they're just as excited about it as I am. I just find that super exciting when you find those kind of like kindred souls in different spaces that think about it the same way. It's super exciting.
I mean, from a business owner, like that's the type of subs that you're looking for. The people who are willing to try something different, be innovative, not say no just because they haven't done it or because it's more work.
Yeah.
I think that keeps the industry fresh and keeps the work exciting. Rather than just going through the motions. And going through the motions a lot of times can be more profitable, but I do think that you get burnt out from it. And finding those subs in that team that you can orchestrate and put together to create a product that's really pushing the boundaries that you did your due diligence on is really cool. And it's a struggle to find them, which I'm sure that you probably experienced. Not all subs and business owners are that way.
Yeah. It's like our electrician that's working on our current house. He's amazing. It's like he's doing things he's not done before. But when I raised it, like I would like to do something like this, and he was like, next time I talked to him, he's like, I went and watched all these YouTube videos on this and this and this, and here's what I found out. This looks really cool. Let's do it. And so it's like that's the kind of guy. It's like I'm all on board with something like that.
You know what I love about what you just said is like, he went home and watched a bunch of YouTube videos to learn how to do something, and I love the fact that that's okay, because I would say 2 years ago, it's like, oh, this guy's just learning everything off YouTube. He's not a real electrician. It's like, but the reality is, it's like, no, these are the guys that are on the cutting edge because they're taking the time to go educate themselves beyond what is the traditional way of learning.
Exactly.
And it's becoming more of a norm, and it's allowing people to, for lack of better terms, level up in their career, where it's like there's an enormous you're a great example. There's an enormous opportunity to learn about things I don't know about.
Exactly.
I could have watched your videos and probably had a way better understanding of solar. We just chose to have you on the podcast instead. but you're putting out this educational content, which is, number one, fun for you. It's beneficial for you because you're also utilizing that in your own home build. You're getting immediate feedback. That's one of the best things. That's one of the things I love about YouTube, is that we post videos very, very live, in the sense that they're, usually shot just a few days prior, and we get all this feedback on these videos. And, when it's, when they call us out for doing something wrong, like, I check myself.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, all right, is this guy legit or is he a troll? Like, I got to make sure that I actually had a call. I got a call at 7 a.m. on my cell phone on Monday, and I didn't answer it because I didn't know the number. And it was a guy out of Vermont, I assume, based on the area code. And he left me a voicemail basically telling me that I didn't install the insulation in our project correctly. That people, I'm not going to communicate. I'm not going to share everything he said, but essentially went to the point where he said that if I'm going to take the time to shoot video and share it on YouTube, that I should be doing the work correctly. And I'm like, damn, like, this guy went out of his way to find my cell phone number and call me and leave me that kind of voice. Maybe he's right. So I watched the video and I'm like, I don't think he's right. So I sent it to our Rockwell rep and I was like, hey, will you watch this video? He's like, yeah, I'm watching it. I'm like, how's our install? He goes, level 1. I'm like, what's that mean? He goes, very minor imperfections. It's the highest rating you can get for installation. I'm like, wonderful. And so I shot a video yesterday, actually, and in the video I was like, hey, to whoever called me at 7 a.m. the other day, I want to let you know that you're wrong. But I kind of went on a tangent there. But my point is like, you get the real world, like the feedback, and for someone like you who's kind of GCing this build, in partnership with this other GC, it gives you the opportunity to leverage a network of people that, to the tune of, I think, what do you have? 1.2 million followers or subscribers on YouTube. That's a lot of people, making sure that you're doing the right thing.
Yeah. Oh, they call me out if I get something wrong. They absolutely do that. I love that conversation, that dialogue. It's like, I look at the videos as a dialogue. It's not me telling people like, this is absolutely the way things should be done. It's more of a, here's what I'm doing. And then I hear back from them. And sometimes there's people that are like way smarter than anybody I know on that topic. And I learn a lot.
Yeah. I mean, you're sharing your experience.
Yep.
And I think that if that's how you present yourself and you stand by that, you're going to have the people who are going to be assholes regardless. Yeah. And then there's going to be people who genuinely want to help. But as long as you don't present yourself as a know-it-all and the authority on every single thing, and you're documenting your experience, like, you can just live with that. You're going to get some people who are kind, some people who are helpful, and you can take it or leave it. But I'm sure with over 1 million subscribers, you probably get a fair amount of each.
Yes. I get a lot of, what are you doing kind of comments. And then you read into it, you're like, whoa, that's so not what I would want to do in the first place. What are you talking about?
Why are you so angry?
Yeah.
It's funny. You talk about how you were, you love the European windows and how you're super excited for them.
Yeah.
It's one of our top videos that we did.
Really?
We talked about the European windows, and it was actually a short, and even on TikTok, like, it went like millions of views, and because everyone's commenting like, this has been around for 30 years in Europe. You guys are late. And it's like, I didn't say this was new. I just said I was like, these are cool. And they're like, you're an idiot. This stuff, everyone has them. I'm like, I know I'm an idiot, but that has nothing to do with these windows.
That's the comment I get the most on my house build videos, is like, this is standard over here in Norway. It's like, I don't live in Norway.
Yeah, exactly. Cool.
Good for you.
I'm not building this house in Norway. When do you expect to have like the full rollout of the house build and content coming to fruition for your project?
Depends on when the house is done.
Yeah.
It looks like it'd probably be, the house is going to be done sometime in June. So we're hoping we're moved in July. So I would hope to have final stuff out shortly after that.
Cool.
Like, I want to do an initial kind of like walkthrough of everything when it's finished around July or August.
Yeah. So you have to circle back with us and let us know. So we could share it on our feed and maybe do a follow-up interview with you to see how your predictions are living up to, your expectations, or living up to real life experience.
Yeah, I'd love to.
That's always interesting to see if all your due diligence and sleepless nights paid off.
Yeah, did it work?
Yeah, or you're gonna have to build another one. This isn't our forever house. I just realized we're gonna build another forever house.
Scratch that.
This was just a business, man. This was a write-off, a big write-off.
Content play.
Yeah, exactly.
Matt, this was super cool, man. Like I said, I was excited to chat with you, and your wide array of knowledge, and I think anyone that's listening to this podcast, make sure you check out Undecided with Matt Ferrell on YouTube. It's at Undecided MF. When I read that first, I was like, MF, like, it's not mother effer.
Yeah,
it's Matt Ferrell.
That's what most people think.
But make sure you check out his YouTube, because there's a lot it's very educational, and there's a lot of good information. And obviously our conversation today is centered around building, obviously, but you go into a lot of other verticals and a lot of other topics. Matt, just as we're signing off here, what are some of the other areas that you do like to really I'm going to say nerd out on when it comes to products and innovation that impacts our life.
I love energy storage, so batteries, anything batteries, I geek out on. Renewable energy generation, nuclear fusion. I go into like a whole bunch of different areas because like the grid electricity, what's coming into our homes, how's that being made? It's how are we going to store that energy on the grid in our homes? It's like that's why I'm fascinated by those. So
I'm gonna have to watch your nuclear fusion video because I have no idea what that means.
Nuclear fusion?
Yeah, like at all. And I,
it's way off in the future. You don't have to worry about it quite yet.
Oh, okay. Very good. I thought it was like, what was that? Is that Chernobyl?
Yeah, that's nuclear fission. This is nuclear fusion. There's a difference.
Got it. Different letter. All right. Yep. Cool.
Well, thank you so much for having me on. It's been a lot of fun.
No, Matt, we appreciate it.
Yeah, for sure, and congratulations on your success. That's a heck of a lot to be doing in 5 years. I'm sure it's way more overwhelming than it seems at surface level. So hang in there, keep up the hard work, and congratulations on the house. That's exciting.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, and for sure, reach out to us when that house is done. We'd love to have you back on and chat about it.
Sure, absolutely.
Cool, man. Have a good night.
You too.
Thank you.